Here with us now, NBC News Tehran Bureau Chief Ali Arouzi joining us on the set with a lot going on to report in Iran, including the clerics who have gone against the Ayatollah stance on the election, which is a fairly significant development given that we haven't seen a lot of answers in terms of where this, quote, movement is going or wants to go.
That's right. I mean, it's a very significant move that these very powerful clerics that are the sort of unofficial brain trust of Iran have come out and said that this election should be annulled and it's not right. But their move is very, very powerful, but it's also symbolic. They have very little political clout. These guys don't sit in government. So, as I said, they're this brain trust and they take their word seriously, but, you know, they can't make any political moves. But it just shows how deep the split is within the system right now.
But at the same time, you were having the Iranian leaders start the show trials, trot out the forced confessions, talk about how the people in the streets were foreign agents, U.S. agents. When you have these religious leaders, the most revered religious leaders in Iran coming out, siding with the people in the streets, that does complicate matters for Ahmadinejad, does it not?
Absolutely, very much so. I mean, it sort of weakens his position as president. You know, these are the people that, you know, he looks up to for advice. These are the people he goes up to consult on all matters of state and morality and religion. So, and they've gone strongly against them. But let's not forget, there's also a lot of people behind him as well. There's some very powerful clerics that are behind him, that have stood very firmly behind him. There's a very powerful seminary in Qom, where a lot of these people are, and they're still very firmly behind Ahmadinejad, and very hard-line people there.
We want to talk about Joe Biden's comments in just a moment, but overall, in terms of the direction of the movement in Iran, how does it compare historically when you look at the Solidarity movement or you look at what happened in China? Is it as focused? Is it as strong? Or is there potentially no good end to what they want?
Well, it's much more split apart. Yeah. I mean, the country, we've never seen the country so divided before in the 30 years since the revolution. These rifts have never been so deep. There has always been arguments within the system, but it's never spilt out into the public arena like this. And it shows that the country is very, very much so divided.
Talk about the young woman who has become a symbol of the resistance.
No, well, I mean, she's one of many people that got killed over these past few weeks. Now, because, you know, there was video of her, she has become this symbol, this rallying cry amongst the people. But there have been a lot of people that suffered over these last 2 weeks. There's been a lot of violence, and this is why these clerics have come out and said, listen, they've actually compared a lot of these people that died over the last 3 weeks to the martyrs in the Iran-Iraq war, which is very significant. You know, they're saying that they've died for their country and their cause, which is a huge statement to make, whereas the hardliners are saying these were agents against the country. So it, again, it, you know, highlights this massive rift in the country.
You know, it's I don't know if you'd say it's ironic, but Time Magazine, I first read in Time Magazine, what a change it is that in America, when we usually hear a Muslim shouting, God is great, that usually is, we see it from either from Osama bin Laden, or we see it from somebody else that is hostile to the United States. It's sort of a cry of solidarity against the West. How remarkable that that's what's being shouted from the rooftops now in Tehran as a cry for openness, for democracy, for freedom.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that worries this current regime is that during the 1979 revolution, people would shout Allah Akbar, which brought the Shah down. So
right.
The very people that brought this revolution about are hearing the same rallying cry that they shouted against them, which is making them feel very uncomfortable. And State TV, when I was still in Iran, State TV had said that this is illegal. You're not meant to shout. It's from your rooftops, and report your neighbors if you hear it. So they were telling people not to shout God is great.
As an American,
isn't that something?
As an American, am I happy that this, obviously, human rights aside, at the stalemate there, that Mousafi gotten in, that basically there's a moral imperative there, and who knows what we have there. But there's this kind of, you know, internal Cold War stalemate there, and selfishly for us as Americans, not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it still remains to be seen where this is going to go. I mean, a major newspaper in Iran who's very close to the supreme leader said that Mousavi is a U.S. agent, that he's essentially America's fifth column in Iran, which is, you know, they're trying all sorts of things to squash this movement, and we'll see how much legs it's got.
I want to play a soundbite for you, and I want to get Pat Buchanan in on this as well. Vice President Joe Biden talking to George Stephanopoulos yesterday. Fascinating comments saying, whatever Israel wants to do here, that's their call. We're not going to get involved. Listen to this exchange.
Israel can determine for itself as a sovereign nation what's in their interest and what they decide to do relative to Iran or anyone else.
Whether we agree or not.
Whether we agree or not. They're entitled to do that. Any sovereign nation is entitled to do that. If the Netanyahu government decides to take a course of action different to the one being pursued now, that is their sovereign right to do that. That is not our choice.
Pat Buchanan, you surprised by those comments?
I'm astonished. I just wonder if it's true. I cannot believe Admiral Mullen stopped the Israelis last year, went over there and said, you're not to do any attack. I can't believe that the United States is indifferent one way or another as to whether Israel launches a war on Iran that, quite frankly, the United States of America would have to finish and a lot of Americans would die in. So, I mean, I don't know whether he was put up to saying something like this, but I do think Mullins suggested he was trying to pull back from it yesterday when he said that would really create an awful lot of problems for America.
Pat, last time I looked, when the Israelis start a war, they usually tend to finish it. So is that an absolute? The Americans would have to jump in there? Of course, those guys don't usually take any prisoners.
Well, look, the Israelis can put 100 planes over Iran in one strike, but they're not going to get everything. A lot of those nuclear facilities are hidden, ones we don't know about. They can't make repeated attacks. They'd have to overfly American territory. The Iranians would respond by attacking Americans in Iran and maybe in Afghanistan. So you got we're at war with 3 countries, and we're going to say the Israelis can make that call themselves? That's preposterous.
Okay, Ali, your take on what Pat's describing there.
I mean, this is just going to compound what the Iranians have been saying. That, you know, foreign agents are trying to overthrow the country, which isn't going to help matters right now. I mean, the Iranians have really stuck to their guns about this, saying, listen, everybody's against us. There's a grand plan to overthrow the country, and there's your evidence.
Yeah. You know, Ali Arouzi, we want to thank you for your incredible coverage of that part of the world and bringing it to us through NBC News. And thanks for being on the show this morning. Great work.